Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome to the Property Couch Summer Series. Welcome to you too, Ben.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Very good, mate. We wait all year for this. It's exciting. We're kicking it off today with the Summer Series. Here we are in the beginning of December. Everyone's starting to get a bit warm. They're getting their pina coladas. They're getting ready for the deck chairs, the beach towel, and obviously ready to hear some financial transformation stories.
Just happy to be outside, really.
Yeah, happy to have some sun. But have we started with a bang? This conversation that we've had with our guest today is amazing. There is so much in it, from international migration to starting with not much to then getting to a great place and then some adversity along the way. I thoroughly enjoyed every single moment of the conversation that we had with Dee, Ben. So shall we cut to the chat that we had with Dee?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. All right, Ben, we've got a very special guest today on the Summer Series podcast. We are chatting with Dee Yerra-Calver. First of all, welcome to the Property Couch, Dee.
Thank you. Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, Ben.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. We're excited, Ben and I, always when it comes to Summer Series. So we're very keen to learn a bit more about you, Dee. But let's start off with a little bit of backstory with you. So tell us what it was like for you growing up as a kid with respect to conversations over the dinner table regarding money.
Yeah, sure. So basically, so I'm from South India. Emigrated to the UK, the north of England, when I was a little kid, probably 1.5. And so first generation immigrants, money was very scarce, like very, very scarce. Like I'm one of 4 siblings, and we didn't get the foreign holidays, no home computers or anything like that, or the stuff that your friends would talk about at school. Obviously being an ethnic minority as well, because the north of England at that time, it was sort of a mining area, and it was a lot of unemployment. Thatcher Era, the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, so wow. You painted the picture of levels of wealth, weren't very many in that area. But yes, we knew that money was scarce, very scarce. The importance of saving money, living on what you have. I remember that quite vividly. There were because I'm the eldest child, so I don't know if that makes a difference. But for me, there were some nights when I thought about money a lot, like, oh, how are we going to be from day to day? Maybe my siblings have a different view on the same thing, but I'm very acutely aware of the scarcity of it and the value of the pound as or dollar. And so, yeah, it was very much, save, value what you have, and don't be frivolous with it. So and it wasn't always like honest conversations. It was more in the atmosphere of the house. We were like 6 people to, I think it was a 3-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. And I just remember like how it was, like you live in each other's space, that's how it was. Anything I have now is like pure luxury. So from that, I'm very, very grateful for that time. It taught me a lot, actually. And whatever I have now, part of it's from that, for sure. So yeah, that was my money story. I think my kids growing up now probably won't sense that, they don't have that concept, the writing the check or the cash transactions. It's now on the card, but they don't know that, where the money sort of goes and comes. So I think hard financially, but because there was 4 of us, we felt like a big group. So our holidays would be with each other, with friends. We didn't feel like we lacked a heap, but we were aware of it. We were aware of it for sure.
You talked about the atmosphere there, and obviously understanding. Was it just an osmosis thing that you knew, or was it a verbal conversation that was being had with you?
I think it caused a lot of tension between my parents, and you know, when you lack it, you just, it was always, you can't have that, because we just don't have it, you know, like, so you wouldn't even ask, because you know that it wasn't there. So you learn very quickly not to ask for lots of things. You ain't gonna get it. And like, you know, if we got a treat, we just split it 4 ways. You know, if it was a chocolate or something, we split it 4 ways or something like that. You know, that's how it was. And you know, it was hard at times, but that's where the lessons come from. You know, no doubt for me.
Obviously, Dee, your parents have made a big effort to get you out of India and move you in, and obviously, I'm assuming it was some type of social housing that you were accommodated in, or did you rent?
No. So my dad came over. He was actually a doctor. He came over, and we bought our own house. But the difficulty was that he was not. My mum wasn't working. Yeah. And there was 4 kids to support, and he wasn't getting consistent work either. Okay. So, and he would sort of go from one training position to another, and it was still never enough to support all of us. It was never enough. So even being that in that area, it was never enough, like, to support us. And we could never go back to India.
So even with a great qualification, people just assume, oh, your dad's a doctor, you should be okay.
That's right. Yeah.
In your case, that obviously wasn't the case.
No, and especially at that time in the 80s, was not, you know, like, was time. Not.
Yeah, you know, lots of government. You know, back in the Thatcher era, she tried to reboot the economy for productivity and all that, but there was a hard landing as part of that story. So how long did this go on for? So you're obviously at 1.5 when you get there. You're the oldest of the siblings. You know, when did you start becoming conscious of that the money just wasn't readily available? I mean, when you're really young, you just go with things, right? But
that's right. Yeah.
How old were you when you started to become conscious to it, and then what was your next step in terms of getting out of that?
Well, I think I was quite young, Ben, in terms of when I was conscious of it. I think it was just. Maybe my sensitivity was that I just picked it up. You know, I knew, and being the eldest, I just knew that we just didn't have much. And, you know, I was thinking, oh, how can I get a paper round or something little like that to help out? It never eventuated. But from early on, I knew for me, want to go to uni, get a job, that I was going to save. And but I was very conscious of it. And I didn't realize how my money story differed until I was an adult, and you realize what people do with money around you. And I thought, oh, everyone does this. You know, this is the same for everyone. Like, you know, but no, it's not the case at all. And so I'm very glad for everything that I have.
What were some of those differences that you just observed? What were they?
I guess how people just spend it like there's no tomorrow. Like, let's just live for the moment, you know, let's go on that, you know, holiday, you know, let's buy that really expensive car on credit. Like, just so many ways. And like, even the food that you buy, you know, as well, it's like the most expensive. It's the packaging, it's everything. And you're like, whoa, hang on a minute. No, like, those money habits have never left me. Like, I'm the person who goes to the shop and looks at the specials as well. Even though I don't need to, I still do it. It's weird as I'm still doing that. And I'm just like, you know, I'll get my kids to do the recycling, the cans and things like that. I just haven't left those money habits. Even though I don't need to, like, there's no reason to, but I still do those things. And it's something to model to my children anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I still give my kids a hard time if they leave lights on in the house, because I got scolded if there was any lights, and to the point where I used to have to turn the television off just to go into the kitchen to make a Milo and then come back and turn the like, just doesn't make sense because it probably used more electricity to do that. But I find that I even look at them going, "Oh, Bryce, just take it easy. I can, like, it's just a light. I can go and turn it off." But I have my dad ringing in the back of my ear, so I can understand that. Did you get a sense in you said you're moved to this part of the UK and you're an ethnic minority, but your dad was a doctor. So how did that play out in that community for you? Because you said that one income patchy wasn't quite enough, but was it still more opportunity than some others in the area, or was it similar? How did you compare to the peers?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like there was I remember where the council housing estate was, sort of maybe 10 minutes up the road, and you'd get dropped off, or they'd come to your house and they'd be like, "Oh wow, it's a 3-bedroom house," and that was luxury for them, and it was on its own little block of land, and I was like, "Oh wow, well that's like really like
posh." Yeah,
exactly. Given that though, these were the people who were also going on holidays that I didn't get to go on either. So I was like, okay, they've got the shiny toys, computer. I was trying to equate that in my head. Like, okay, they're getting all the cool stuff and they get to talk about it after they come back to school from summer holidays. But I live in this house, but I don't get any of that other stuff. So I think it clicked for me that some sacrifices were being made for where we were living and having a garden. I mean, people were doing it tough, but I think maybe spending money in different ways, like, yeah.
Well, it makes sense to you now as an adult looking back, but as a kid before the penny drop, were you thinking, well, I think I'd rather live in a smaller house and go on the summer holidays? Or did you? Yeah.
Yes. You think that you're very sort of short-sighted. I don't think I even thought that. I think when they were so impressed with what my house was, I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. But like, yeah, I was like, oh, I just want the computer. I just want the computer. But
what you don't know though is whether they were, that computer was bought on a 60-day interest-free period, or that holiday was also paid for by credit, right?
That's right.
So
exactly.
That's not disclosed to you. What's disclosed to you is, we've got a computer at home. Oh yeah, we go on holidays. And so there's that envy piece that's attached to that.
Absolutely right. And it doesn't stop, does it? It goes on till you're an adult. It goes on and on and on and on. So it's never ending.
So Dee, take us through, you've gone through the childhood, that's the experience in teenage years. What about as you start to get your first taste of independence? It sounds like you did some study, but then your first job. What did that look like for you? And how did you tell us how you spent your first pay packet? Did you blow it, or did you save it all?
Here's the thing. I went and bought, because I had a really, really old secondhand car. I bought for £400, which I don't know in those terms at that time. I saved it and bought that when I was at university. I took my brother and sister to school, went to uni, did the whole pick up drop off thing at the age of 19. When I actually got left uni and started my first job, I went and bought myself a brand new Toyota Yaris, but it was on credit. It was like on a car loan, because I was like, oh, this is great. But everything else I'd saved up until that point. Interestingly, I don't know if this is relevant or not, but I had an arranged marriage early on when I was at university. So really, when I got my first job, it was kind of not really, wasn't totally mine to spend as such, because you live as a couple. And so really that part of the journey is like, I bought the car, and then we obviously bought a house together, and that all sort of came together, but it was really more of a joint thing at that time. So so the car was probably the only indulgence, I think. I mean, everything else I saved. I'm a big saver. Yeah.
Dee, do you remember your first holiday?
First holiday? Yes. It was to Sweden. It was at this lake house.
Yeah.
And we got a really good deal. No, that wasn't the first one. The first one, we went back to India to visit relatives, and the palaver to get there and how expensive it was, and all of that. It was such a big thing for 6 of us to get there. We went back to India, and then after that it was Sweden.
How old were you when that first holiday back to visit friends and relatives?
I would have been like 8 or 9. 8, yeah. Okay. So it was the first time.
So, but there wasn't that consistent holiday, but you did get to see that. Yeah. Okay, rightio. And then you have this arranged marriage situation, which obviously didn't work out.
Yes, that's right.
So you're starting to develop this sort of self-reliance aspect. When did that become really? You obviously are protective of your younger siblings. You're building out this sort of self-reliance model. When was that sort of penny dropping around? If it is to be, it's up to me. And what do you think the origins of that is?
That was very clearly, I think, when my husband left, and I was a bit blindsided about that decision. Very blindsided, actually. I mean, literally, if I sat and thought about this before the podcast, I was literally, the rug was pulled from under me in terms of that decision. And I was working part-time, I was raising our 2 children, but he was a breadwinner. And then that suddenly went from overnight, from that to me being the breadwinner. And the sense of, so I'm getting emotional about it, because I didn't think I would get emotional, but the sense of responsibility that comes with that it's immense. Like, it's so full on that you're responsible for these 2 children. And if you don't go to work every day, no one else is going to bring that money in. And that was very, I'm so acutely aware of that even now. And it's less, as time passes, it's less, but the fact that you just suddenly become the most responsible person in the house and you've got no one to discuss decisions with, that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
It is a huge deal. I was 38 when that happened, and now I'm 41, so 3.5 years have passed, but my kids were 7 and 9 at the time. And look, my sister actually luckily had just emigrated from the UK around that time, but she didn't know that this was going to happen. And even with her here, you can never feel in a more alone position, I would say, in that sort of aspect. It was really life-changing, for sure.
So can you fill in the gaps for me in terms of, so you've studied in the UK, you've got your qualification, you've got an arranged marriage, you migrate, you're still with the same arranged husband.
Yeah, that's right.
And you come to Australia to set up a new life here.
Yes.
What sort of time period is this?
So we were married in 2003, emigrated in 2009. I had a child at the time, 6-month-old. My eldest was 6 months. And then the marriage had obviously broken down in 2018. So we were married sort of 16 years. So that's the time frame. And obviously I came here with no family support. That was very hard for me because it was my husband at that time, his idea to come, and I was leaving my whole family behind in the UK. That was very, very hard for me. So you manage that, you conquer that. So that's probably another changing point. The self-reliance is okay, well, you don't have anyone else here. So let's make a good life out of this. And I'm happy to say we're thriving now. Me and my kids, we're a great team. We have the best fun, and we have the most honest conversations. And it's probably the relationships with my children are probably the realest thing that I have ever had. I think it's a real kind of arguments, great times. It's everything. It's everything that I just enjoy it. I enjoy being a mother. I always wanted to be a mother. So I think that was always my priority, Ben, was you get your kids through this, you get yourself through this, you do whatever it takes, and I'm sure a lot of people out there could relate to that. You just do whatever you do for your kids.
Yeah. Well, there's a bit to this, right? So let's unpack some of these layers. So you've got a let's do a little bit pre 2018. So you're not yet in a marriage separation. Help us better understand the process of a arranged marriage, because during the normal courting process, you get to I don't mean normal. During the conventional courting process, there's the you get to know a person, you get to understand some of their traits, and then work to see if there's that alignment. And quite often for people, it's how do you manage money? But you've got this process that works for 15 years. What did money management look like for the two of you? You were a saver. You had all that experience that you told us about when you were growing up. What about your partner then at the time? Was there similarities? Was there differences? How did that play out for the next 15 years before we get to the point where you're independent?
Yeah, sure. So I think our money backgrounds, also he was raised in India, and sort of with the arranged marriage, we had time getting to know each other, a little bit of time, but not in the conventional way, in terms of you date, you get engaged, etc. I guess one of the things is, yeah, that's actually a good question, because we never discussed money or our views on money, which is interesting. You discuss all the other things, but the views on money was never brought up. You know, we talked about hobbies and things like that, and there's lots of things, but not money actually. And then, yeah, so his view was sort of, he's very much a spender, live for the moment, whereas I'm very much like, let's pay down the house debt. Let's not invest in cryptocurrency and all this. I'm very much kind of like slow and steady, take calculated risks. Let's do a lot of research and speak to enough people and get educated. Whereas I don't think that was necessarily the case for him. And although it didn't cause like obvious conflict, looking back, I'm like, yeah, money stories are quite different. His parents were in India, and I think if he needed something, they would buy it. And even though he was from humble backgrounds as well, I think he was raised believing you spend. So like, that's fine, you spend. Initially, I thought that was a good compliment in terms of, like you balance each other out in a sense. But, obviously, whether that in his mind was an issue or if he had other things, I mean, I'll never really know the full story to that. But yeah, we definitely had sort of different attitudes towards money.
But it didn't provide so did I hear you right? It didn't really provide a conflict. There was just differences and you sort of averaged out in the middle, or was there any?
That's right. Yes. There was a lot, there's compromising. I suppose I did a lot of the compromising, but I'm biased. So maybe that's me saying that, but yeah, I felt like I did a lot of the compromising, and okay, we'll just spend the money on this, or yes, we'll invest in certain things that were probably not the most appropriate thing at the time.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, I remember having a conversation with our accountant at the time, our joint accountant, and he explained it to me so clearly, but good debt, bad debt. And we were talking about, starting a business, and he said, well, that's good debt, that's business debt. Your house is not going to be the best debt, so if you can pay that down. And that really sort of stuck in my head. Like, this is 6-7 years ago. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm hearing you. So, we had an offset and everything for the main house. And so I really sort of stuck with the ideas that you guys talk about in terms of that, tolerable and productive debt that you guys talk about really sticks with me. Like, it's, that was something, but I think different people hear different things. Yeah, but no, just trying to be more sensible and smart with money. And now I've had this 3.5 years to do that.
Well, you had this life-changing event in 2018, but in the lead up to that, you said that you were prioritizing looking after the kids, and at this point in time, not even aware that this was on your horizon, right? So, how stark was that life-changing event for you from one day having a joint agenda to the next day? Obviously, there's some time, but the next day, metaphorically, being, if it's to be, it's up to me. Like, how stark was that for you?
It was huge. It was huge. And you don't know at the time, you're doing day to day, I mean, I wasn't sleeping, and I was losing weight. I wasn't even trying to do any of these things were just happening to me. I was trying to process it all. I had hundreds of questions. With time, those things improved, but I cannot understate how huge that is. And I do sit here smiling today, and I had to put on a brave face to my children as well, because they were asking me a lot of questions and they weren't getting any answers anywhere else. So I had to have the honest conversations with them in an appropriate way at that time. And they literally, I mean, my kids got me through it. I mean, and I'm not talking about them giving me advice. Their very presence was a thing that got me through it. You know, if they ever listen to this in years to come, without them, like, you know, you don't know, you know, and I'm sure you guys can relate, you know, your kids are everything to you, you know, you'd do anything for them. And so I like, okay, let's bear this, let's get through this for them and for me. And yeah, but look, you know, when you have to go to work, before I was just working part-time, it was optional. When you have to go to work, it puts a completely different spin on how your life revolves from that moment onwards. But I turned that around and I was like, okay, well, actually you're scared about all this responsibility, but actually maybe it's actually a really great thing and you're now in control.
So Dee, obviously divorce is difficult on so many levels, right?
Yes.
Separation. And then there's the money element, you know, the separation of the assets and what's going to be left over. And you know, it's just a difficult time all round, right? You've got children's, you know, you want to keep them safe. You want to make sure that everything's in order for them and they've got continuity and consistency and love when it's hard for them to understand why it's happening. Obviously, from our point of view, the finances are everything for you in terms of, rightio, now I've got to go and start earning a full-time salary because I don't know what I'm going to have available. So take us through how you address the financial side in terms of did you go and speak to an accountant? Did you speak to anyone, or did you just, you know, and when you're having that financial separation discussions, did it land where you wanted it to land, and how did that play out? Because I'm sure there's, you know, what is it, 1 in 4, 1 in 3 relationships do break down. So it's very common.
Yeah. And look, Ben, I suppose the stigma for that would be, there's a big stigma with it. First of all, in my community, there's a huge stigma with this. And then add on the general stigma. And I never thought I would be in that position. You know, I was always so like the perfect family, you know, 2 kids, you know, great incomes. That was a really hard thing to get over. And it sometimes still is, you know, like, but now, like, you know, with time, those things have eased, but that social stigma is still a big thing. You know, we're in 2021, and I've surrounded myself with supportive people and understanding people. But look, in terms of that financial thing initially, so our finances we had the same accountant, we had the same financial advisor. You know, how do you split all of that? We worked at the same workplace. Everything was linked. The house was in joint names. How do you split all that? So that's a good question. I mean, obviously I needed to have a lawyer to separate the finances. And she recommended me a great financial advisor. And I went and saw her and I said to her, look, this is my plan. I want to downsize my house in 2 years. When my kids go to high school, I want to be mortgage free. I want to buy a brand new car because my current car was getting very old. And she was like, right, she wrote it all down. And I looked back at that plan and I was like, I've ticked all those boxes. So now I'm currently mortgage free. I have a very nice brand new car that I love driving. And then obviously the investment property. So I ticked my goals. It's been sort of, if I've set a goal, I've ticked it. But at that time, he actually came to me. He didn't come to me. He said before he left, he just wanted to split the finances before the end of tax year. And tax year was 2 weeks away. And I was very distraught because I was like, I couldn't even think. I could not even think. because this is happening on a psychological level, but then we're talking about the finances. And I remember it was a very draining meeting where the lawyers were sat there, and things were said, and I just went home drained that day. And I said to myself, I'm never going to feel like this again. No one's ever going to make me feel like this again. And I'm not going to be in that position again. And so I got myself new accountant, new financial advisor, and a really good team, and a mortgage savvy investment broker as well. So yes, to use your terms, I have a really sort of, good team now, I think. But it was very hard, Ben. It took time. It took time to, because I had to sort things out in my head, like, to sort myself out mentally.
But most importantly, you got a plan. Now, whether that was it may not have been a detailed plan, but it had the big rocks in the jar in terms of what were the things that you needed to do to get through the difficult phase. And as you say, time has now allowed you some breathing space, and you should be absolutely super proud of what you've been able to do. And that's why I'm loving this financial transformation story, right? Because you've been thrown a few curveballs, right? You've been absolutely, all of the things, all of the effort that you've been trying to do in terms of the foundation things, some of those bricks have moved. And so, all power to you. It's been amazing to listen to. So tell us about the investment property story, because this is an interesting thing for me, right? Only because when we sit down and talk to people, and also when you do it professionally, you are looking for those money beliefs, you're looking for those money habits. And I've written some things, safe, careful, conservative, because of, the uncertainty that's been presented to you and the challenges in your younger years. So to take on debt is sometimes also, like, you want to be debt-free on your family home. So there it is, it's showing up there. Yeah. But tell us about that good debt, bad debt story that you had with yourself when it became, okay, it's up to me. I need to look after my kids. So I'm going to invest in property. Why property? And how did you get comfortable with the risk appetite for taking on some debt?
Yeah, right. So, like I said, I wanted to be mortgage free. So I was mortgage free as of January this year. Brilliant. I was like, and for me, that was security. Having a family home paid off. If anything happened to me, my kids have the house. And everyone's got different situations, right? So it's a mental thing. It probably doesn't need to be paid off for most people, but for me, that was top of the list. Yep. And so that is what allowed me to mentally take on the investment debt. And now I know you don't have to have your house paid up to do this. After listening to your podcast, I'm fully aware of that. But for me, that was my sort of transition to, I was saying I have my sister in the UK, and she's invested in property as well. And she started younger than I did. But she's not married, she doesn't have kids. But I was talking to her last year, and I was saying to her, look, I'm going to sell the family home. I'm going to downsize, going to be mortgage free. Then I'm going to invest in property. That's what I'm going to do. And I did it in property because I think it's a safer asset than other things. I think things like crypto, look, I'm sure people are good at this. I'm a busy person. I can't sit and manage those things. And that's why I have a property manager for my properties. I never even questioned that I would self-manage anything, because this is a passive investment. I don't want to be on my phone hours a day checking if something's gone up or down. My time's too precious for that. And so I was like, property's just going to sit there. I'm not going to be obsessed with it. Yes, I'll do the getting them revalued every now and again, pull out the equity, etc. But it's a safe asset. And in terms of legacy, it's more for me to sort of live off and my safety net in retirement. I mean, I love my job, and I don't think I'll ever retire. I'll continue to work part-time because I enjoy it. But to have that sort of safety net and of investing in property, and I find it really enjoyable. Like, I find it so fun. I find listening to you guys, talking to people about it, just everything, reading about it, everything about it is just enjoyable. And it's not a hobby. It's definitely not. If anybody thinks it's a hobby, it's not. There's lots of processes to it, but be careful how you do it. Take sensible advice. But yeah, for me, property was a safe asset, for sure. Safer asset compared to everything. And I wanted to grow my wealth as well. Because I think it's a weird thing when you talk with your wealth and this concept of richness, and it gets associated with greed. And I don't really think it's about that. For me, it was more about a sense of self-worth. I think in my case, it was, I'm worthy of this and I'm going to do this for myself. And it's something completely for me. And the kids will benefit as a side effect, obviously. But for me, it was like, this is me. This is all me. And so, like, yeah. So I live by those decisions, bad or good. They're my decisions.
There is what I want to be really clear here is some superheroes don't wear capes, right? And when you were telling your story before, I was choking a tear. I've got to be honest. And you are a hero, right, in this, because
I don't think so, but like, yeah,
I can't imagine. I cannot imagine what it feels like to have what you just described, thinking that everything's going okay, then be blindsided. And then not only that, dealing with, as you say, let's get it done in 2 weeks before the end of the financial year, bang, mind blown. Secondly, the mental cognitive grind that is just going on to what is happening to me, what are all the emotions. And then I've got to be a leader to my children at the same time, whilst dealing with some of the community pressures that come from stigma. Like, that is enormous, right? So, wow. So you are a hero, and your kids will tell you that one day if they haven't already. But
thanks, guys. Thank you. That's really kind.
The question I'd like to ask you is, what about someone, Ben just said the stats before, what about someone who's listening to this who is not as advanced as you are, but facing similar circumstances? What do they do? What's the first step? What's the first thought process? How do they model you so that they can actually come out of this empowered and independent?
What I did at the time was I educated myself. So the library is the best resource ever, free for everybody. I educated myself in any way possible, not just with finances, but with mindset. I mean, I meditated, I did all that. I sat in a quiet space, and in those quiet moments, you get the clarity of what to do. You really, really do. I had all these inspirational quotes written next to my bed, and that's the things I would look at every day. And like, I've got them here. But basically, I cut down on my expenses. So I cut up my Amex card. That was cut up. So there's no credit card, no points, no nothing. And then I looked at all my utilities, insurances, everything. It's the lazy tax, cut out, trim the fat. All had to go now. And then I actually went and I sold loads of things on Gumtree for a good period of time. There's lots of stuff lying around the house. I sold jewelry. I didn't want to have to do that, but I did that. And I was like, I don't wear it. I think it could be used in a better way. And so it was all just going towards the home loan, all of it, and I had to leave the workplace because it's where my ex was working. And so that was a big deal. That was a big deal. And I worked elsewhere. I took up a second job, which was salary packaged as well. And that was really savvy to do that. So I did that. And so I made sure that if there was times I didn't have the kids, made sure that I was working. So if of times when you're just basically trying to earn on one end and trim the fat at the other end. So you're trying to cut down on your expenses as much as you can, really, because I knew it was going to be a short-term thing, because I had this plan, we pay it off. I made sure my kids were sort of aware, not to the extent I was when I was growing up, but they were aware that there's no expensive holidays for this next while. We're gonna have to sort of be careful with what we spend things on. So really just educating myself, sold lots of stuff. And there's always stuff you can sell. There is always stuff. Even if you have to, there's always ways to make cash that you just don't realize. and, you know, Facebook communities. I mean, there's lots of things. And it's interesting when you read something, there's a link in there and it leads to something else, like another opportunity. And then it leads me to this. And then I was on this Facebook property group and it led me to this podcast. And so this podcast led me to other things. It's like this chain of events. If you educate yourself, if you're open to that, look, anything's possible, like, you know, whatever walk of life you're from, but you have to be open to doing it. And there's probably no place for self-pity for too long, because it obscures what's going to happen. You know, grieve the loss, grieve it, and then, you know, make a plan. And yeah, really make a plan.
I'm going to ask you later about some of those quotes, so don't forget to remind me about that. But I want to come back to the reading that you were doing, and you did stumble across Make Money Simple Again, and you gave it a read, and you discovered the platform and you know, the Money Smart system. Tell us about some of the takeaways you got from you know, sort of reading that material, and you know, did it help you in terms of organizing your finances?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the debt thing, the different types of debt, definitely where you allocate money and how you allocate money. If anything, I was maybe I went overboard and went a bit too stingy on things. If you ask my kids, they'll probably say that. But it definitely, I actually read that book twice, because I got it out from the library just back in 2018. I was like, oh, what's this? Because, you know, you put in a search in the library and it came up. And then I read it again recently after the podcast. I was like, oh, you guys wrote this. And I was like, okay. And I read your other book as well, and the Armchair Guide to Property Investing. And I was like, oh, wow. And it made just so much more sense in the context of the podcast. Yeah. So yeah, for that, I mean, yeah, forever grateful to you guys. It's just
oh, look, at the end of the day, it's content to be able to hopefully guide people to, you know, and that's why it's put out there. It's just, we see, you know, your story is a success story, but there's still so many people doing bad things with money. I refer to it as dumb things with money on the first podcast. Yeah. We see it all the time. We see lazy money. We see money left on the table. We see money not allocated to jobs to do. And it's transformational. Each one of those incremental little bits of putting this stuff together sums up to a very powerful outcome. And you're obviously a perfect illustration of that. So, you know, again, all credit to you in terms of what you've been able to do there, Dee.
Thanks.
Hey, my next question is, my final question is going to be those quotes. But now you are where you are.
Yeah.
How's life better for you now?
It's so good to not have a home loan. Because, like, for instance, before the lockdowns, I took my kids to Cairns direct from Newcastle. We flew. Yep. We stayed in the best hotel in Cairns, because the guy, the Uber driver, he was like, "You're staying in the best hotel in Cairns. Kids, do you know your mum booked this hotel for you?" And my kids have not forgotten that holiday. Out of all the sort of expensive, they're like, that was the best thing ever. Like we still, that was in June, July, school holidays. And so doing things like that, having the money to do things like that, because I'm like, I don't have a mortgage to pay. And I think I'd acquired my first investment at that point. So just doing things like that. I drive my brand new car, which is paid off because I paid for it cash. And I love that car. It's a very nice car. I love that car. I keep talking about my car, but I do love it. And that was my gift to myself. That was my hard saving, you know, like, and my kids see that. So it's like, I don't have to think about, you know, I do the things with the food at the supermarket and the switching off the lights and all this business. I still do that because that's habit.
I'm so glad you've given yourself these rewards, because we've talked about, you know, financial anorexia in terms of you start building up this and then that is where that's when it is greed, but it's also coming from a place, you know, the Jerry Harvey story talks about basically growing up dirt poor. Yeah. And so having all this wealth is just one big sort of safety net for him. But what you've also doing is you're proving that delayed gratification and you're spending it on experiences, even though the car is technically a thing, an asset,
Yeah.
but it's giving you experiences that you're really enjoying. And it's every time you look at it, it's reward for effort,
Yes.
right? And it reinforces that. So I think that is, again, another great example of that financial transformation that you've been on. So I'll finish with my final question, which is I'm coming back to those quotes. So
Okay.
those quotes that beside the bed.
Yes.
What are a couple of them that you'd like to share with us?
So one of my favorites is "The wound is where the light enters you." That's by Rumi.
Ooh,
That
is good.
I was going to say, yeah, it's good.
That is good.
"Things work out best for those who make the best of how things work out" by John Wooden.
Things don't just happen; they happen just is another version of that.
Yes, absolutely. Stephen Covey quote, which I know you guys have talked about his book: "I'm not a product of my circumstances, I'm a product of my decisions." So that's that one. And again, another John Wooden one: "Don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do."
Love it.
John Wooden, that's the legendary basketball coach in America, right?
I don't know who he is.
Yeah, and no, it is. He was referred to as coach. He was the most successful college basketball coach of all time. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I didn't know that.
And he even said some of his best work was done with the teams that didn't win the championships.
Wow.
But he was visionary because he made it all about being a great person and having clear values. So he actually has a set of rules, a manifest of rules that he lives by. And that's what he instilled in his kids, and all of the great things like preparation, and effort. If you gave me the best effort, he didn't care if you weren't the best players. He actually coached Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think, in his college years. But he's there is actually an interview.
With Tony
I'll see if we can find it in this. Yeah, with Tony Robbins. It's a ripper. It's one of my favourite interviews before he passed. In terms of how he lived his life and basically the rules in which he lived by. So very, very values based. A terrific individual to model yourself off.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. That's great. So there's a few more, but yeah.
Well, I think the important part there is that you used some anchors to make sure that when you're feeling wobbly, it's sort of course corrected, and I think that's an amazing takeaway. My final question for you, Dee, is around completing the story of the transformation, right? So you've now got this car you're proud of, home paid off, you've got an investment property, you've got a plan, you've got a future, and you've actually got some resolve that is amazing, right? But for me, what does it feel like to model getting on the floor, getting knocked down and picking yourself up again? What does it feel like to model that for your kids? That's one. And two, how does getting back to the top of the mountain, which you are clearly on trajectory for.
Oh, thank you.
How does that affect your sense of status, given that the stigma took a hit that comes from this life event, but then how will that go towards you feeling redeemed from that going forward?
Well, it feels amazing because your kids won't listen to what you tell them. They will see it and model it, I believe. So, you can say all the things like, my parents used to tell me stuff, but really you're seeing the things. So really modeling that has been amazing. And for them to see the struggle, and they're like, now they're so like, they're proud of us as well, they call me Amma because that's what they call me. That means mom. Like, oh, Amma's got 2 investment properties, and we talk about it all the time. And it's like, not in the context of like, we're rich and we're wealthy, but like, look what you can do. Look what you can do, and, woman on my own, look what I can do. And I'm glad because I have a son and a daughter. So I want them to both see that in their different contexts. For my daughter for different reasons, for my son for different reasons, like appreciate that we can do it. When I was going through this journey, like when Ivis rang me, she was like, oh yeah, you go for the show. And I'm like, oh really? I didn't think my story was very interesting. And I also thought that, I thought everyone does this. Like, I thought it was a thing that everyone like does, or lots of people do. I didn't even realize that a lot of women don't do this. And so I only then started looking to it after that call, and I was like, oh yeah, clearly it's not a thing that we do. But in terms of, you know, like modeling for my kids, that's been amazing. And like I said, they are my strength. Yeah, they're my strength. I can't remember what the second question was.
So you've done amazing with that. So just the stigma hit that came culturally for you, but how does this go towards helping redeem that?
Yeah, so like a lot now. I think anybody that wasn't serving me in terms of what my life goal was is not someone that I sort of wanted to be in contact with, and I only surround myself with positive, like-minded people now. And I feel a bit more like, as time passes, I feel a bit more invincible. Like, go me. Nobody really knows your finances outside of the home unless you choose to discuss it. But really, other people's opinions don't matter anymore, because like, I know in my head, like, I'm doing this for myself, and like, you know, all power to you, whoever, but this is me for me. So like, yeah, for sure.
I love that, Ben.
What an awesome way to finish.
You're a legend, Dee. Like, in my wildest dreams, did I not think that the summer series would serve Ben and I to the extent that it does, when we get to just sit here, listen to people who are humble, tell stories about what's going on for their world, and you know, that old adage of, you don't really know what's going on behind closed doors, and then so you let us know what was been going on behind closed doors, which is amazing. So my final thought is to throw it over to you. I put the call out there to say to anyone who had a financial transformation story, why don't you come on the summer series and share it? What in that caught your attention, and why? And what is it that what's the main message that you'd hoped that your story would give others in our community from hearing it?
Well, I mean, look, I just did it randomly. I didn't think I would get picked, but I suppose the opportunity to tell my story, it's a bit like therapy in a way, like, because I didn't think I'd get it as emotional as I did, having had the time, you know, it's been 3.5 years. I didn't think I would, but it clearly did, you know, like clearly sort of, but to tell my story, and that, you know, anybody who's facing adversity, it can be done. It can be done. You have to grieve, you know, go through it, take help. Like I wouldn't say counselor, but she was more of a holistic sort of person who just sat and listened to me sometimes. And she just held that safe space. And that's when I was talking to her, and she helped me get clarity about a few things, or for me to realize it. So get help, educate yourself, grieve the loss, and then take yourself to a better place, and know that you're in control. You are in control. There's many things we cannot control in life, clearly. But the things we can control, let's try and make a positive impact, and let's do this consciously, and not just be greedy about things. You know, like there's right ways to do things. And I mean, and that's why I like your podcast, because it's so holistic in so many ways. It's not like, oh, let's just go after the next dollar. It's like, you know, each episode is just different. And, you know, for that's amazing. That's what really resonated to me. 7
grades of financial well-being.
Yeah.
You're at financial peace. And now you're going to consider financial contribution into the future. Now,
yes.
That contribution could be for your children.
Yeah.
It will be for your children. But it's also, you know, your message and your story here today could start to see other people who are at different stages of their 7 grades, moving up their grades to get into control, and control into opportunity, and opportunity into, you know, peace, and then peace into contribution, right? So
absolutely,
it's an empowering story. So we're absolutely thrilled you put your hand up, Dee, and it's been wonderful chatting with you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Dee. There you go, Ben. What a wonderful, wonderful human being Dee is. I just did not want that to end, because I just wanted to be around someone who was inspiring me and was able to do what she was able to do for herself, for her family, and to change the course of her future.
Yeah, look, I mean, here's someone who's gone through a program and a life events has anchors attached to original beliefs of safety, security, conservatism, moved and had to change those mindsets, to overcome that adversity. And she's climbed the mountain. So I just, we talk about these episodes being financial transformation episodes. What a great one to start with.
I know. If you weren't moved by that, I don't know, Ben. It's very, very difficult to move. You're a tough crowd if you weren't. But Dee, we appreciate you coming on. You were very vulnerable. You were very nervous at the beginning, and you just came and just delivered the gold. And there will be people that whose lives you have transformed just because you were prepared to come on and chat with us. So, Ben, our whole series is about financial transformation. That is what we live for. That is what this podcast has been doing for the last 367 episodes. Just want to shout out to folks, if they want to have some reading over the summer, they can go to thearmchairguide.com.au and get a free book, our How to Retire, Armchair Guide to Property Investing, How to Retire in 2,000 a Week. Yep. And if you want some basic money management transformation, go to makemoneysimpleagain.com.au and you can download a copy of our free best-selling book there.
Free book, and you get the complimentary platform to run the system, the Money Smart system, all included. It's pretty easy.
Do yourself a favor, folks, as we are in the shadows of the holiday season, in the shadows of Christmas. You obviously be setting potentially some New Year's resolutions in the not too distant future. So hopefully that might be something that you can do, Ben. But if that's how we're going to start this series, Ben, I am super excited for the upcoming week.
You bet. You absolutely
Property
bet.
Couch Summer Series, mate. But until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
Hey guys, Bryce here again. Just want to catch you before you go and let you know, if you're new to our community, there are a lot of episodes to catch up on, but it's really important that you start from the very beginning at episode number 1. Because episode 1 through to 20 share all of the foundational pillars and frameworks that you need to know to get the best out of listening to this podcast. So I'd recommend that you start there, and the little tip is to maybe start on 1.5 speed. Now, for those of you that are time poor and don't have time to go back from the beginning, don't worry, we've got you covered as well, because we've created a binge guide that goes through all of the details and makes it easy for you to read and get up to speed very, very quickly. So if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/fast track, you will be able to download that binge guide and you will be up to speed in no time. And whilst you're there, I've got a few extra goodies for you, because we have our top 5 frameworks that you'll learn on this podcast, as well as the Make Money Simple Again ebook, which will help you with the foundations of basic money management, so you'll have everything you need to succeed in building your own lifestyle design and getting the best out of this podcast. Now, just a reminder that anything that we cover on this podcast is not considered financial advice. We certainly recommend that you get your unique circumstances looked at by your individual advisor, and everything we talk about is just general in nature. To thepropertycouch.com.au/fast track, and you can go and get all those goodies and catch up